I'm going to break down in great detail every new clue and trend for weapons. Welcome back, everyone. The second trailer's out with a bunch of new footage, and there's a lot to decode here.
What do you see that I don't?
That's the $1 million question. Well, the $50K question. And the fact that they feature that tells me that someone's going to find out where these kids went and try to claim that money. But first, let's try to establish what that dark force is that ravages the town of Maybrook. We know that 17 kids have run off with their arms stretched out like a plane. But it's not just the kids. Here's the principal looking super creepy, running in that same airplane pattern. And I love how while he's running, we only see one store sign, Nails, which is probably a nail salon, but it has a double meaning that is far more sinister. It looks to me like old-fashioned nails are a big part of the problem. And then when the principal's looking below a car at the gas station to see this kid's shoe creepily being dragged away, the words fast, friendly, fuel are peeking out and winking at us, which teases this shot later on, which I can only describe as fast, unfriendly fuel. And that also reminds me from the first trailer. Look, the school's logo is a horned goat, and the goat's smiling, ironically, because a horned goat is a demonic symbol for the devil. Noticing a pattern here? The clues the production designer is planting for us are double entendres for the occult. And then we see this salt line on the floor, which is known for bringing protection from demons or spirits. It just feels like witchcraft or some sort of demonic possession. And then there's the bell. The first thing I thought of when I saw this bell was this. The teacup from Jordan Peele's Get Out. I think the bell has a direct correlation to the possession of the kids and the adults. And what sells me on that is what's carved into the bell. V6. Why V6? There's zero chance that this was by mistake. So my first thought was the V is the Roman numeral for 5. And therefore, I think cryptically it could read as two separate numbers, not 56, but 5, 6. And in biblical references, 5 is often associated with humanity, since we all have 5 fingers, 5 toes, and 5 senses. Well, most of us do. In a lot of horror films, maybe not so much. And the number 6 in the Bible, since God created man on the 6th day and rested on the 7th, 6 is known as falling short of the divine, or flawed, imperfect. So combined, V6 could be interpreted as flawed humanity. And that tracks really well with some of the overarching themes that I see in these trailers, which I'll talk more about later. But the V also resembles a chalice or blade, both symbols of ritual of the occult. So you combine that with number 6, which is flawed, and it becomes a ritual without grace, or a form with no soul. Sounds pretty haunting to me. But either way I look at this, that bell has occult behavior literally carved into it. Also, in my previous episode when the first trailer came out, I took notice of the whale chart on the classroom wall. I thought the chart was notable, and I think I got more whale comments from you guys than anything else in the trailer. I appreciate everyone who went whaling with me, but as I was looking more closely on the second trailer, I noticed something odd in this shot, and upon brightening it up, look what I find. Are you kidding me? More whales! At this point, it's a deliberate pattern from the art director. Now, do I think there'll be actual whales in the movie? Of course not. They're in some small town in the middle of nowhere, America. But I do think their presence has real meaning. The poster in the classroom lists 2 types of whales. The Mysticeti, who eat krill and plankton, and the Odontoceti, the toothed whales, who hunt and eat meat. And we see more examples of them both in the kids' bedroom. I think the whales represent the children, who start as the Mysticeti, the sweet and harmless and innocent creatures. And I think these children are put under a spell, from either a witch or some demonic presence. And these kids become the Odontoceti, the toothed hunter whales. They become the weapons. I think based on what we've seen, the kids are collected and deployed. Whales are also an apt symbol for the kids, because they're known to be exploited. Whales have historically been hunted for oil, for meat, for profit, taken from the world for the benefit of others. So where does this theory lead us? Who's taking the kids? And who's weaponizing them? Could it be this creepy lady from the first trailer? She's the one person who looks possessed who's not hurting herself. It could be, or she could also be infected by something even darker. Well, whoever it is, I think it's this person who's cutting off some of the kid's garment. They look in control, and it looks like a woman's hand. Look at those nails. Maybe she went to that salon. But also look, I noticed something fuzzy behind her hand. And upon closer inspection, look what I found. 2 more kids. Just standing still, emotionless. Where are they? I bet you they're in this dark house. One shot I found interesting in this new trailer. This is the house the kids come flying out of, possessed. And this shot is the same house. You can tell by the steps and by the window treatment and the two windows on either side of the door. But here in this shot, the kid isn't possessed. He's just running home with his arms down. This tells me that the house probably belongs to a family of one of the students that is taken over by something demonic, because I think this shot is inside the house. And I think these are the two parents that are also possessed. And however creepy they don't look like they're in control of anything. And they're approached by who I assume is their son, who is definitely not possessed, since he can step over that salt line. Yeah, this is definitely the same boy running in the house earlier. Look, they have the same hairstyle. I also think this is the boy from the first trailer, whom the teacher sees in her nightmare. And later, we see the teacher coming across the house, gets a peek inside, seeing someone laying there who I think looks like the lady with the wig. And then she's able to break into the house. It seems to me the teacher is not at fault here, and yet she's being blamed and accused of stealing the kids herself.
Be locked up until she tells us what happened.
I love those kids.
This situation feels all too familiar. The parents are understandably furious, and they succumb to a mob mentality, where they often forgo hard evidence and just jump to conclusions, especially when it comes to children. Does the teacher become the scapegoat the town is looking for, at least for a while? I think she is until she can prove otherwise, and that's probably why she needs to be brave enough to go in that house. Now, remember I mentioned that $50K reward up front? There's clearly a manhunt for these missing kids, and there's this kid from the first trailer who we see a close-up shot of in the second trailer. We see him escaping and running away. Clearly the beans are scared out of him. Is he trying to claim that reward? We can see one of the kids, Matthew's father, played by Josh Brolin, watching footage of kids running away from the Ring doorbell, to then marking their sightings on a map and connecting the dots. You see him in the first trailer circling the right house. It's the same shape as the padded up house. So we're told that Weapons is written in the style of the movie Magnolia. And that means they follow several different people's story who are all related to this series of events, but each bring their own perspective that paints the picture. I would expect then, if Weapons have overlapping characters, to also have overlapping themes. And one of them could be, for example, gun violence. This shot at the school, to me, evokes memorials for kids who were killed during school shootings, and the collective trauma that the parents are left with.
We're talking about 17 kids in one classroom.
Often to wonder why it was their kids that were taken.
I want to know what happened in that classroom. Why just her classroom? Why only her?
Another theme could be something to do with race and education in America. The director, Zach Cregers, was living in Northern Virginia when they experienced tensions during the critical race theory debates. There's even symbolism for possible redlining. I'm not saying these themes will be plot points or even come up in conversation, but when watching this film, I'll be asking myself, what is Cregers trying to say between the lines?
There's something very, very wrong going on.
If this film can tap into the weaponization of grief and exploitation of children, layered with mind control and sorcery, it'll deliver a uniquely potent blend of horror that hits uncomfortably close to home. Thanks for watching.